I know. Absolutely beautiful. This game is a work of art. Seriously, I am so impressed with what I've seen so far of what is an amazing piece of work from Rockstar Games. One of my guilty pleasures, or obsessions, whichever way you look at it, is to turn the cinematic camera on and just control your character and your horse and admire their beauty like some kind of Sam Peckinpah or Steven Spielberg epic western yarn. The game is absolutely incredible. Everything works in perfect harmony to create a tranquil, peaceful area that can be juxtaposed with all the action and violence that crops out of nowhere, and the systemic build-up of all these different characters, interaction, physics, destruction, which I'll cover in much more detail in my full attention to detail analysis, which will be coming soon, but I need time to enjoy the game. Remember, I only got this on launch day, which was Friday, so 2 days ago now, but I'm getting lost in it. But anyway, you didn't come here for that, you came here for the game. So, moving on to that. After I took a look at the base consoles yesterday at launch, which offers an equally immersive and mesmerising title as the one you see here on the much smaller install base, yet much higher interest premium consoles. Just with slight nips and tucks to certain areas to best fit within the hardware constraints, genuinely fantastic versions that any owner can feel safe in purchasing. Please check it out if you want to know how they fare. Now, it should come as little surprise then that the bigger brothers here offer improvements to image quality and refinement, largely via using the extra GPU resource to dramatically ramp up the pixel count. Both versions offer a full downsample solution on HD screens, with the Pro allowing you to choose from the system menu. Something I noted back at launch would be the best choice rather than an operating system enforced as we see on the X, something I will touch on shortly in this video. Now, what are those pesky pixel counts, you ask? Well, as I covered when the Pro gameplay was first released, it renders a native 1920 by 2160 image on the Sony machine when output into a 4K screen, or when super sampling is set on in the operating system menu. After having access to the game now, I believe this is still the case, and it uses checkerboard in conjunction with the TAA to improve that base to a full width 3840 via a reconstruction filter implemented within Rage's Engine's own Temporal AA edition, something which the previous Red Dead and GTA 5 titles did not have. Now, this equates to fast movement, and the abundant use of alpha transparencies from foliage, hair, tails, etc. can be missed and leave stifled breakup from the likely stochastic jitter the method uses. Now, it does pick up on these areas, but it's not as good as geometry and more solid areas, certainly on textures. So it's a softer image overall, but you do get an improvement on that whether you got it on a 4K screen or downsampled on a 1080p one. Now, the method here takes a minimum of 2 frames, although I think we're seeing more than that here to blend into a final image. A welcome boost over the base PS4, even if on a large 4K screen it can exacerbate the sub-native image at times. Make no mistake, this is a phenomenal game, and I use a 50 or 65-inch UHD display and a 40-inch HD one just for reference. So if you're playing on a huge 1080p screen, then obviously it will start to stand out a little more on that version as well. But the average screen for HD is usually around 40 to 45 inches. 50 to 65 or bigger will certainly need a UHD display, and that's where some of the areas of breakup and weakness can come into effect. So we move to the Xbox One X, which instantly pushes that pixel count and image clarity even higher to a full native 3840 by 2160. Now, just like the Pro, I'm not seeing any elements of dynamic scaling here, but that I wouldn't rule that out. It could happen somewhere. But it's instantly recognizable this is the cleanest, sharpest version overall. It still uses that temporal AA to improve the image quality, but due to the much higher improvement on pixel count, twice that, in fact, of the PS4 Pro, which again is the same improvement the Pro has over the base PS4, a substantial leap in image quality and clarity. Now, the reason here is twofold. Yes, the GPU throughput is much better on the X than the Pro, of course, but I also think that improvement in memory bandwidth and VRAM itself is another good reason. The vast quantity of objects, geometry, textures, world states, game states, physics states, AI states, all of this needs space and RAM, and the Xbox One X just has substantially more of it. 50% more, in fact, although the actual allocation to the game, 9 gig versus around 5.5 gig, is a slightly lower, it's still a huge leap, and that bandwidth cannot be under-egged. When you're trying to output full 3840 by 2160p, I've said this before, the PS4 Pro just literally is hamstrung in modern titles. It can't really do it. A world of this scale and density, and the PBR-based material shaders across the title, multiple facets composited together to create the final material output and light reactions, all of this has a requirement on every facet of the machine, and RAM is one of the biggest. And this is one of the limitations I believe the team will have had on the PS4 Pro. Obviously there are other options they could have chosen. One of them is dropping the resolution down to 2560 by 1440, almost the perfect resolution for the Pro itself. That would have been around 12% less than what we're getting here on the outputs, and it may have given an even cleaner image with that temporal AA added in, and just drop the checkerboard solution at all. There might be some marketing at play here to make sure that it's 2160. I personally couldn't care less. I just want a better image quality. And there's also the option to go to 2688 by 1512, which would be slightly more, 2%, give or take, not really going to be a massive amount of difference there. That would give, well, sorry, 2% less, I'm saying, than what we're currently getting now, and that would make slightly better image quality for the same throughput and output. And that might be the best option. Hopefully they'll add it back in. Now, one of the other reasons that it actually can look slightly worse than the base PS4 at times, yes, that is true, you are hearing me right, it can. You can see an example on screen here with super sampling enabled and then super sampling disabled in the menu screen, but outputting at 1080p. If it's enabled, it still outputs the same 1920 by 2160, but you can't affect the sharpening filter, which you can when you output at 1080p. This is on the base PS4. Again, this option isn't available on the Xbox One X or the Pro when it's outputting at 4K mode. It is still a better mode visually on a 4K screen, solving the pixel acne, you can see it on the trees, than the standard machine. Now, because the X has much higher resolution, it doesn't need a sharpening filter, but the Pro is still sub-native. So really, adding the sharpening filter back in on the output for 4K mode would actually help the image quality on the Pro, but it might also exacerbate the problem with the checkerboard solution, which brings me back to using that 1440 or 1512 resolution. Again, this is very early days, and I'm sure it will be improved. You can see an example of what the sharpening filter does here on the Pro when you put it output to the PS4 mode. Increasing the sharpening filter to maximum actually highlights and gives a much cleaner, all those high frequency elements, makes everything look better, even though you're actually adding in information that isn't there. If you drop it down to the minimum, which is what the 2160p version on the Pro is using, it looks a lot softer and smudgier overall because it's losing on that sharpening filter. So these are the things that I think Rockstar can add back into the title on this mode, and that would improve the image quality on the Pro. But as it stands, there's no doubt about it, the Xbox One X is a much better looking title due to that increase in pixel output and throughput, giving a sharper, cleaner image overall. Both titles, in fact all versions, look absolutely remarkable and sumptuous, and everyone can be happy with the version that they get. But when it comes to refinement, and if you have the option, it's a no-brainer. In terms of visual quality, all of them look beautiful, the X just looks the most. Now, depending on your choice on the PS4 Pro, you do have that super sampled option in the menu screen like I've covered, and there's another benefit to that, and that's performance. Looking at the base PS4 here, we covered it yesterday, there are quite a few dips down to low 20s at certain points. The Pro runs it much better overall, which I'll touch in a moment. But comparing the Pro in super sampled mode and the Pro in non-super sampled mode, you can see one instant improvement, and that is that small detriment to performance is pretty much eradicated with a locked 30 FPS during this bar fight scene and then the cutscene outside. You're seeing lows of 27, which around 33 to 50 millisecond spikes consistently on the PS4 Pro in 4K mode, which you do not get on the non-super sampled mode here.
No business, sir, but please, I beg you.
This is obviously a welcome improvement if you are affected by the small dips that can happen on the Pro occasionally. This is really the worst point that I've seen. So much better than base consoles. You can also see the minor improvement on the image quality here, but it's obviously much better in real life on a 4K screen. So comparing the X to the Pro, both running in their 4K modes, you can see the performance is much better than what we covered yesterday on the base machines. There really isn't any worries here at all. There is a couple of dips, certainly this cutscene that we've just witnessed before on the two Pro versions suffers slightly more on the X than it does on the Pro. In fact, it's pretty much locked on the Pro, give or take that start part. It's much more consistent, but overall performance between the two, I'd say the Pro just ever so slightly is slower, or at least slightly worse, but you wouldn't really notice it aside this kind of comparison, but it is there. So if you are in the market for Red Dead Redemption and you have the X console, that is certainly the best place to play it. It looks the best and it also runs slightly better, but there's really, like I say, not much in it. Between all versions, the X is the best, the Pro is the second, and then it's PS4 and then the base Xbox One. But if you have any of these machines, you are in for an absolute treat. That there is absolutely no doubt at all. It's a remarkable piece of work, something that really deserves a full in-depth analysis, which I will give it very soon. But for now, I'm out with a few more minutes of analysis. You can watch the frame rate run through, and I'll be back very soon with a deep dive into just what happens out in the wild, wild west. Remember, I'm completely self-funded and independent. If you do share this video somewhere where possible, that really helps me immensely. Like it and talk about it amongst your friends, and if you can, support the channel by subscribing and also on my Patreon link. Chat with me on Twitter if needed, but I'll be back very soon on the next one.
This town will never forget.
I wish I could squeeze his eyeballs to mush.
Is that so?
Come on, please! Please, somebody, be generous. Man, he's trying to run for it. This ain't happening.
We'll settle this, don't worry.
Take him down. Over here.
Cross the law. Sure as hell I do.
Now you can.
He's a bastard.
You want some too, huh? Come on, pretty boy. Pretty boy? You're kidding me. Pretty boy?
What you scared of?
Yeah, I got this son of a bitch.
Kill him, Tommy. Let's see it. Put his face in the mud. I'll crack your damn skull.
Is it yours?
No business. No business, sir, but please, I beg you.
Making new friends again, I see, Arthur.
Look who we found sniffing about.
Josiah Trelawney.
The very same.
Well, I thought you'd gone to New York.
And miss all this glamour. You must be joking.
How are you?
Well, quite well indeed. I went to Blackwater looking for you.